Kamaru Usman is still that guy. Maybe not the force of nature he once was, maybe not quite the apex predator who ruled the welterweight division for years, but he's still a legend, and he proved it yet again. Because even now, deep into a career that's taken its toll on his body, Usman was still good enough to not just hang with, but take the fight to an undefeated, surging, explosive welterweight in Joaquin Buckley. Let's be clear, Usman dominated the early rounds. Buckley made it close late, no doubt, but it was Usman who came out sharpest. Those first two rounds were pure control from the former champ. Buckley's flurries did start to pick up later. His signature style of swarming pressure and wild combinations did begin to have some effect, but it wasn't clean and it wasn't pretty. Buckley, for all his speed and power, throws with almost no precision. There's no surgical aim in those punches. It's chaos. It's overwhelming, yeah, but it's a hurricane with no steering. And Usman, even slowed down, was still calculated enough to weather the storm, still smart enough, experienced enough, and skilled enough to take advantage of the hold. Because let's be real, if that was prime Usman in the cage, Buckley wouldn't have made it to round 3. He would have been ragdolled. Buckley had no answers for the wrestling. He was getting taken down at will, and that was with a version of Usman who no longer has the same spring in his step, the same explosion in his double leg, or the same cardio to apply constant top pressure. And yet, it didn't matter. At one point, Usman shot a clean double leg from distance. Think about that. When was the last time we saw that kind of shot from him? Most of Usman's wrestling over the years has relied heavily on pushing opponents to the fence, grinding with upper, body pressure, clinch work. He's rarely shot a true level change blast, double in the open. Not since his knees really started giving him trouble. And that's an important note. Usman doesn't like people bringing up the state of his knees, but let's not kid ourselves. The damage is there. You can see it in the way he moves, the way he shoots. There's no spring, no drive from the legs. And yet, in this fight, he managed to hit something resembling a classic takedown. Even if it wasn't a textbook shot. More like he threw his body forward and just collapsed into Buckley's hips. The way he followed through was actually wild. He kind of launched himself forward twice, first into the legs, then again with another explosion to drive Buckley to the ground. You just don't see guys hitting two-phase takedowns like that. It was unorthodox, but it worked. Another time, Buckley tried to change levels and switch stances mid-motion, and Usman caught the leg anyway. Even with that stance switch altering the angle and making the takedown trickier to finish, Usman adjusted. He didn't panic. He stayed composed, cut the corner, and completed the takedown like a veteran. Buckley, on the other hand, looked like a guy who's never drilled that scenario in his life. He was literally throwing punches while standing on one leg in the center of the octagon. No fence to lean on, no base, no balance. You've got to defend the takedown before thinking about offense. Basic stuff. And that's the story of this fight in many ways. Usman showing veteran poise, Buckley showing raw chaos. At times, it worked. At times, it looked like Buckley might catch him. But overall, the difference in fight IQ and experience was glaring. Even the more basic takedowns from Usman, like the classic double leg against the fence, showed his understanding of the small details. Buckley tried to defend with a wide stance, but Usman simply changed the angle, elevated a leg, and drove him down diagonally. It was clean, it was calm, it was clinical. Now, Buckley did land some shots later in the fight, especially when Usman slowed down. But let's talk about those striking exchanges. Because man, Buckley was swinging at air for most of this fight. Up until the fourth round, his striking accuracy was 25%. 25% against a guy like Usman, who isn't even known for his defense. That tells you how wild and uncalculated Buckley's offense was. Buckley's striking is pure chaos. He throws with everything. Every punch is full power, full speed, full torque. No setups, no rhythm, no real feints, no calculated angles. He just loads up and lets it fly. And against a veteran like Usman, even a slower version of Usman, that kind of style is going to miss. A lot. And it's not just that Buckley misses, it's how he misses. His shots are telegraphed. He flares his. Elbows out. He loads up so obviously that even someone without elite defensive movement can avoid them. At times, Buckley was sprinting forward like a man possessed, throwing combinations that would miss by entire feet. That's not pressure, that's recklessness. There were multiple times Buckley tried to counter Usman's kicks by immediately firing back with hooks, but he wasn't even in range. One moment, he blocks a roundhouse kick and then tries to throw a right hook from that same spot. He's a foot away. There's just no concept of range in some of these exchanges, and Usman, credit to him, saw this pattern and made the necessary reads. You could literally see him recognize when Buckley was about to swing big and just angle off, roll under, or simply back out. That's the kind of in-fight adaptation you get from a former champ. Now, Buckley did make a few good adjustments. He threw that Leon Edwards combo, jab, left straight, left high kick, and actually landed it partially. It wasn't clean, but it was a good look. Usman blocked most of it, but you could tell Buckley was starting to adapt, at least a little. And to his credit, Buckley never slowed down. That dude has gas. He kept up the same intensity from round 1 to round 5. The guy's got cardio and heart, and that's dangerous. Even when you're losing rounds, a fighter like that can still take your head off at any moment. Later in Chiwasinji, the fight, he did land a few clean shots, like a looping left behind the ear, a right hook that got around Usman's guard, and even a body shot that seemed to hurt Usman just a bit. But by then, it was too little, too late. Usman's durability, his chin, and his composure carried him, and while he didn't finish Buckley, he showed he's still a problem for this division. If you're not elite, if your takedown defense isn't sharp, if your striking is sloppy, Usman will make you pay. The bigger concern here is for Buckley. Yes, he's powerful. Yes, he's explosive. But he can't keep relying on chaos to carry him through fights. The moment he faces another well-rounded fighter with good defense, good footwork, and real fight IQ, he's going to struggle. If Usman in 2025 is slipping most of your shots, imagine what JDM, Brady, or even someone like Ian Gary does to you. In the end, Usman didn't just survive, he thrived. He out-wrestled a younger, more explosive opponent. He weathered the storm. He made adjustments. He showed heart. And maybe most importantly, he showed that even when you slow down, brains still beat brawn in this game. Joaquin Buckley came into this fight on fire, undefeated at welterweight, explosive, confident, and relentless. But Kamaru Usman reminded the world that he's still the real deal. Even if he's not in his prime anymore, Usman showed there's levels to this game. From veteran savvy to technical wrestling, this fight was a masterclass in how experience can neutralize chaos. One of the more interesting aspects of this matchup was the way Buckley approached his striking. He wasn't just swinging wildly, he had intention behind some of his combinations. One of the smarter sequences he kept going back to involved loading up on his left hand to bait Usman into ducking, then following with a tight right uppercut. It worked. Usman, trying to level change or slip under the pressure, would often dip his head, and that's exactly when Buckley would trigger that uppercut. He landed it multiple times throughout the fight. It wasn't always clean, but it was consistent, and it was effective. But the best combo Buckley landed, that came in the third round. That was his shining moment. He came forward aggressively, faked the left hand to freeze Usman, then changed his stance. He went from a solid southpaw base to a parallel stance, dipping under a counter, left hook from Usman, and rising with a left hook of his own. It was fluid. Then came the right hook, which didn't land clean, but it didn't have to. Usman got flustered. He was slightly off balance after Buckley ducked under his shot, and you could see him step away to reset. But Buckley didn't let up. He lunged in with a big left hook, which Usman blocked, but then Buckley came right over the top, with a right hook that clipped Usman's shoulder. That, right there, was probably the cleanest shot Buckley landed the entire fight. What made this sequence even more impressive was what followed. Usman tried to fire back with a right hand, and Buckley, sharp on the read, blocked it. He was disrupting Usman not just with strikes, but with movement. His angles, his feints, the way he shifted stances, it all had Usman a little off rhythm. One moment that stood out was when Usman overextended on a right hand, and Buckley ducked under, ripped a left hook to the body, and tried to come upstairs with a right hook.
by like half a foot. This swings
that one may have just grazed Usman, but it clearly made him reset.
And also to note, Usman went the angle off to the right side.
Buckley hopped in with a right uppercut, dipped under another left hook from Usman, and spun around with another wild left hook of his own. It barely landed, but again, it was the movement that caused the disruption. He even collided into Usman's leg, knocking him slightly off balance. None of those punches were game changers on their own, but the sheer pace and unpredictability of Buckley's offense made it difficult for Usman to look comfortable on the feet. And that's the thing. If Buckley was facing a guy with bad knees, or even just a slower reaction time, this kind of pressure and movement could have totally unhinged his opponent. Usman's base was solid, but you could see how the frantic energy had an impact. Buckley even threw a few side kicks to the body to keep Usman honest. And honestly, I expected more of those, especially side kicks to the knee. He only threw one the whole fight, and when he did, Usman's knee visibly buckled. That moment stood out. That one strike had a serious effect, and yet Buckley never went back to it. Maybe he was afraid of being taken down off the attempt. Maybe he just forgot about it in the chaos, but it felt like a missed opportunity. As for Usman's striking, it was serviceable, but let's not sugarcoat it. It's clearly the most diminished part of his game. He used to have such a sharp, commanding jab. He could dictate pace with his straight punches, his timing, and his ability to break rhythm. But here, it looked a little labored. He still landed jabs, still threw decent straight, rights and front kicks to maintain range, but the sharpness wasn't there like it once was. In his prime, Usman would have been able to interrupt Buckley's rushes with more volume, more output, and way more control. But where Usman truly separated himself, wrestling. That was the vintage Usman we remember, even though he's not the same physically. His grappling IQ is elite. When he got Buckley to the ground, he didn't just hold him, he worked. He used half guard to soften Buckley up with punches and elbows, chipped away until he transitioned to mount, and controlled position with veteran calm. There was a moment where Usman hit a takedown, moved into half guard, and from there, just slowly broke Buckley down. This wasn't just wrestling, it was strategy, patience, and experience. This win means more than people realize. Look at the pattern in this division. Every veteran of Usman's era has been losing to the new wave. Tyron Woodley, gone. Stephen Thompson, struggling. Even guys like Gilbert Burns have taken steps back. But Usman, he just beat a next-gen, undefeated welterweight contender. That says everything. He's the only one from that era who stopped. The momentum of the new blood. And let's just say what needs to be said. A prime Kamaru Usman would have destroyed Buckley. No debate. Maybe even a prime Colby or Burns would have had an easier time too. That whole era has been seriously underrated lately, especially after Usman lost to Leon Edwards twice. But we have to remember the context. That first Leon loss, a literal last-minute head kick, and the second fight, extremely close. Usman's stock plummeted way too fast in the public eye. And I said this in the prediction video, I wasn't writing. Usmanov. This is a guy who took a fight against Khamzat Chimaev on short notice, at middleweight, a division he's never competed in, and nearly made it a pick'em. That kind of resume doesn't just disappear overnight. Fighters like Usman are dangerous no matter what stage of their career they're in, and he reminded everyone exactly why. So what's next? Usman said he wants to fight Islam Makhachev. That would be crazy. Massive, actually. If he beats Islam, he might even move up and challenge Dricus du Plessis at middleweight. Maybe he vacates the belt, maybe not, but that's the type of legacy-defining run he's chasing, and it's earned. But personally, I think the fight to make is Usman versus Belal Muhammad. They've already had tension. There was some kind of heated exchange on Usman's podcast recently. Let's settle it in the cage. Both guys are right there in the title picture. That matchup could determine the next challenger, depending on how it plays out. Now, on the other side, Buckley still has options. He may have lost, but he showed grit, cardio, and flashes of brilliance. A fight with Michael Morales would be fireworks. Or if the UFC wants to get spicy, do Buckley versus Ian Gary. Two confident, flashy, unorthodox strikers. Perfect matchup to see who's ready for that next step.
And I hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. If you guys
Bottom
did,
line,
like, make sure to subscribe to the bell for notifications.
Usman
See you
reminded
guys.
the MMA world
Biggest
that he's
strike
not
of the
done.
entire fight. The
He may
boxer
not
was
be
most
at his
dominating. You can
peak,
see how he flustered
but he's still
Usman.
a legend.
Knocks him off balance with
Still
his
one of the most
movement. Same thing with
accomplished
right hand.
welterweights
Usman
of all
extends his
time,
right straight
and he just
all the way
handed a
through.
rising
Buckles
contender
with the tiny
his first
ducks
L
under
in the
punch,
division.
counters with the left hook to the body. Throws a right
That
hook
speaks
seems to
volumes.
have maybe grazed the
So,
face of
yeah,
Usman, but it does get
put some
deflected off of
respect
Usman's
on
left arm.
Kamaru
Usman pulls
Usman's
away from
name.
the left hook.